The steel handle moved half an inch and stopped. Cold flour dust clung to my palm. Somewhere above the wire shelves, the refrigeration unit kicked on with a dry electrical snap, and the smell of ozone sharpened inside the storage room. "It's stripped," I said. Eloise Wynne stood 3 steps behind me between stacked flour sacks and trays of wrapped bread. Her blush-pink apron had a high bib over a cream-ribbed top, and a clipboard rested against her hip. The small silver scar above her left eyebrow caught the ceiling light when she looked from the handle to me. "How stripped?" "The latch spindle turns, but the bolt isn't retracting." She glanced toward the shelves. "Can you force it?" "Yes." "How much would the frame cost?" "More than the lock." "Then don't." That answer told me more about her situation than the eviction notice folded beneath her clipboard. The notice claimed the bakery's wiring and foundation had failed inspection. Clause 4B of her commercial lease allowed the property owner to terminate occupancy if a licensed municipal inspector declared the building unsafe. Apex Holdings had bought the corner property 3 months earlier, and the company controlled both the landlord entity and the 30-day enforcement timetable. If the notice stood, Eloise lost the bakery her family had run for 27 years. Walking away was not simple. The business loan was secured by the ovens and equipment. A relocation would trigger penalties she could not cover. Closing would put 11 employees out of work and erase the delivery contracts that kept the bakery solvent. Apex had leverage because the lease language was real. The inspection was not. I had seen the inspector's signature the night before. The license number belonged to a man who had retired 3 years earlier. Eloise had found me because I spent most mornings at the back corner table with black coffee and a secured laptop. She knew I investigated corporate fraud for law firms and small companies. She also knew I had turned down 2 other cases that month because I was tired of clients asking for illegal shortcuts. Before we entered the storage room, she had signed a limited investigative authorization on a bakery clipboard. The scope allowed public record research, lawful witness interviews, evidence preservation, and security review. Her attorney would approve any subpoena or court filing. My fee schedule sat beneath the authorization, with a stop work clause giving Eloise the right to end the engagement at any time. That was why I was here before romance, before loyalty, before anything that could complicate the work. I took my hand off the handle. "The morning prep crew arrives at 4, she said. The wall clock above the bread rack read 10:06 p.m. 6 hours, I said. 5 hours and 54 minutes. You count like an owner. I count like someone who has payroll on Friday. I dragged a plastic milk crate into the center aisle and set my canvas bag on it. My blue jacket went over the back of a second crate. The refrigeration unit hummed, stopped, then restarted with another faint ozone bite. Eloise sat across from me on an overturned flour bucket. I opened the secured laptop. "First question," I said, "why does Apex need this specific corner?" "They want luxury apartments." That is what they announced. You don't believe them? Developers do not forge structural reports merely to improve a project schedule. They forge reports when the legal route exposes something worse. Her thumbnail pressed into the side of her index finger. "What do you need from me?" "The original lease, every notice Apex sent, your renovation permits, and written permission to preserve certified copies." She handed me the clipboard. The storage room became an improvised field office. I downloaded the property deed, corporate registry, zoning map, and inspection history from public databases. Every source went into a case log with a timestamp and checksum. The ownership structure led through 3 limited liability companies, all using the same registered agent. Clue 1. The fake inspector report cited old electrical wiring, but Eloise produced last year's permit for a full bakery upgrade. A licensed electrician had signed the work. The city had closed the permit without violation. The refrigeration unit clicked again. Cold flour and ozone. At first, the smell marked confinement. Then it became a clock. Eloise watched me compare the landlord entities. "You do this every day?" she asked. Not usually inside a room full of yeast. You could have chosen a quieter profession. I tried one. It involved more shouting. She looked at me. I kept my eyes on the registry. The answer had revealed more than I intended. At midnight, I found the first useful connection. Apex's property subsidiary shared a registered agent with a rail infrastructure company that had recently purchased easements behind 2 buildings on the next block. Clue 2. I wrote the connection into an entity and permit matrix. Eloise leaned forward. Rail easements? Maybe logistics access. Maybe nothing. We do not decide before the documents do. You really hate guessing. Guessing is expensive. She reached toward a box on the shelf, then stopped. Coffee biscuits, she said. Emergency supply. You keep biscuits in the storage room? I run a bakery. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you get. She opened the box and passed me one. The first small laugh of the case came while we were locked behind a failed commercial latch. At 1:15, the refrigeration unit stopped. The silence changed the room. Then a low fan continued turning above us. The compressor overheated, I said. Can we stay in here? The flour is safe. We are uncomfortable, not in danger. If the fan stops, we move the sugar sacks and use the vent panel. Without breaking the $800 door. Without breaking your door. The correction mattered. At 2, Eloise's head rested against the wire shelf. Her thumbnail had stopped moving. I took off my blue jacket and set it over her shoulders without waking her. Then I returned to the milk crate. The third clue appeared at 3:08. Apex's rail affiliate had paid for subsurface soil testing under the name Northline Environmental Logistics. The invoice location matched Eloise's block, but no environmental permit appeared in the city portal. Clue 3. I preserved the invoice metadata, the parcel references, and the payment disclosure tied to a transportation lobbying report. The industrial project was still hidden, but the shape of it had begun to form. At 4:12, keys rattled outside. The steel door opened, and Theo Alvarez, the 19-year-old prep cook, stood there holding a ring large enough for a prison guard. His eyes moved from Eloise and my jacket to me on the milk crate. I can explain, Eloise said. Theo blinked. Should I get the fire department? Get coffee, she said. That sounds more serious. We walked into the bakery as dawn reached the front windows. The smell of cold flour followed us, but the ozone faded when the storage room compressor shut down. Eloise signed the final engagement agreement at the corner table. Her attorney, Vivian Tran, joined by video and reviewed the scope before either of us continued. No hacking. Vivian said, no unauthorized access. I replied, no pretending a public record search is a court order. I do not do that. Good. I have met men who say they work in intelligence and mean they own a browser. Eloise hid a smile behind a coffee cup. Vivian authorized certified records requests and sent a preservation letter to Apex's property entity. My first deliverable was due Friday. The entity and permit matrix, source log, and risk assessment. The professional line was written before the first feeling had room to form. Week 2 belonged to records. I moved from the storage room to the small office behind the kitchen. The desk barely fit between a filing cabinet and a rack of cake boxes. Eloise placed black coffee beside my laptop each morning without asking how I took it. I told myself the gesture meant she remembered customer orders. On Monday, I obtained certified corporate registrations showing that 5 property companies and Northline Environmental Logistics shared the same registered agent. On Tuesday, county records confirmed Apex had bought 3 rail easements behind the block through separate subsidiaries. On Wednesday, Vivian requested the fake inspector's archived license file. The retired inspector was named Harold Fenwick. He lived 2 states away. He had not signed anything for Apex. The first practical win arrived Thursday, when Vivian used the expired credential and renovation permits to obtain a 7-day administrative stay on the eviction notice. Not a victory. Time. Relief after the first pressure. The bakery stayed open, That afternoon, the espresso machine began making a thin, high rattle. Eloise heard it and closed her eyes. If one more machine turns against me, I am selling muffins from a cart. I crouched beside the machine. The group head gasket is worn. You diagnose espresso now? I diagnose noises that interrupt thinking. That sounds personal. I ordered the correct silicone gasket from the model number and installed it after closing. The next morning, Eloise pulled a test shot. The machine hissed without screaming. She tasted the espresso. It no longer sounds haunted. Mechanical improvement often appears spiritual to the uninformed. She looked over the rim of the cup. That was almost a joke. I deny it. Week 3 opened the question wider. Dr. Reena Shah, an environmental engineer retained by Vivian, reviewed the Northline invoice and soil boring coordinates. The testing pattern did not match residential construction. It follows a rail corridor, she said during a call in the bakery office. Bore depth and analyte list suggests they were evaluating chemical transport risk or underground contamination. Can you certify that? Eloise asked. I can certify what the invoice indicates and what is missing from the public permit record. I cannot state their final project without plans or internal communications. One clue closer. No leap beyond evidence. Reena requested the laboratory chain of custody records through council. Vivian filed a public record petition for the city's preliminary transportation meetings. The same week, I hardened the bakery. Apex's agents had photographed the alley twice. One man tested the rear handle and walked away when Theo opened the kitchen door. Eloise signed a security authorization before I changed anything. Commercial deadbolts went onto the alley and basement doors. A network appliance separated point-of-sale traffic from office records. Cameras covered public entrances, not employee break areas. Theo learned how to export footage without altering timestamps. I kept an evidence log in the bakery office. Eloise kept a pink sugar packet beside it. Marcus had not appeared yet, but the packet came from a habit of hers. 1 sugar in tea after a bad phone call, none on ordinary days. I noticed because noticing was my work. I never told her I noticed. My former colleague Malik Stone came by on Friday. Malik had known me before the private intelligence license, before the clean contracts, before the years I spent proving that my past did not own my methods. He reviewed the source log and tapped one line. You stayed inside public records. Yes. You tempted? To do what? Skip ahead. I closed the binder. Apex left enough footprints. That was not my question. The espresso machine released a short burst of steam behind us. Malik waited. Every case offers one door that opens faster if you stop asking permission. I said, and I did not touch it. He nodded toward Eloise, who was checking inventory beyond the office window. Keep it that way. The fastest path is exactly what Marcus would expect from you. The name tightened something in my chest. You think he is involved? I think Apex uses people who do not file invoices. Malik signed the independent review page, confirming that my collection method stayed within scope. Third-party recognition mattered, because competence without verification became mythology. Week 4 brought Marcus. The brass bell above the bakery door chimed at 10 in the morning. He entered wearing a faded leather jacket and the same scar across his jaw I remembered from the south side. 10 years had added gray near his temples, but had not changed the way he scanned exits before faces. He stopped at the counter. Eloise wore her blush apron over the cream top, the bib high across her chest. She did not step back. Marcus looked past her at me. Jett Ross, he said, still pretending paperwork makes you clean? The bakery noise thinned around us. I set down the espresso screwdriver. What do you want? Apex dislikes unauthorized investigations. This one is authorized. Your license does not protect the people around you. He picked up a pink sugar packet from the condiment tray and rolled it between his fingers. A bad health inspection could close this place for a week. A damaged refrigeration unit could cost more. Old police reports could make your clients rethink who they hire. He placed the packet on the counter instead of crushing it. That restraint was worse. It meant he wanted the threat remembered, not dramatized. Theo stood near the kitchen doorway with his phone visible at his side. The bakery camera recorded the full exchange. Marcus glanced toward Eloise. "You have time to choose better company." She met his eyes. "I already chose my attorney." Marcus smiled once and left. The bell stopped moving. My hand had closed around the screwdriver. I put it down. The metal clicked against the counter, and the cold flour smell from the back room drifted into the front as Theo opened the storage door. Ozone joined it. Danger had entered the anchor. Vivian filed Marcus's threat statement with the administrative case. Theo preserved the camera footage. Malik helped me write a protective plan that did not turn the bakery into a fortress no one could use. We changed delivery procedures, added two-person closing shifts, and scheduled patrol checks through a licensed security firm independent of my investigation. Eloise chose every change. That night, I found her in the office, pressing her thumbnail into her finger. I set a cup of black coffee beside her. "That one is yours," she said. "You made tea with sugar." I looked at the pink packet. She covered it with her palm. "You are not as subtle as you think," she said. "Neither are you." The phone rang. Vivian had located Harold Fenwick. Another loop opened. Week 5 belonged to witnesses. Vivian and Malik traveled with me to interview Harold at his retirement community. He remembered the property but had never inspected it. The signature on Apex's report copied an old filing from 9 years earlier. He signed a sworn declaration after reviewing the document with independent counsel. Dr. Reena Shah received the soil testing laboratory records the next day. The analytes included chlorinated solvents and corrosion risk compounds associated with hazardous material transfer infrastructure. The lab report referenced a project code, Nexus East Spur. The name appeared nowhere in public zoning filings. Reena prepared an expert declaration explaining the mismatch between the testing program and Apex's announced residential development. Vivian tied the evidence together. Shell entities, rail easements, environmental testing, fake structural report, pressure on tenants. Still, the central question remained open. What exact project did Apex intend to build, and why did Eloise's corner matter? The answer required the City Transportation Archive. On Friday, the archive produced a meeting index referencing a confidential concept review between Apex Director Nolan Vance and municipal rail staff. Vivian requested it under expedited judicial review. Apex objected. The hearing was set for Week 7. Before then, the threat came back to the storage room. Week 6 began with a refrigeration alarm at 8:40 p.m. Eloise called while I was leaving Malik's office. "The storage temperature is rising," she said. Theo found the compressor panel open. "Do not enter alone. I am standing in the kitchen. Wait for me and the service technician." When I arrived, licensed refrigeration technician Paula Green examined the panel. One control wire had been loosened. The failure was deliberate but reversible. Paula restored the connection and signed a service report. "The food is still within range," she said. "Someone wanted an alarm, not a full loss." A message. Vivian asked us to preserve the bakery's original lease ledgers and maintenance receipts for the injunction packet. Eloise kept them in a fireproof box on the lowest storage room shelf. Paula left after confirming the compressor. Theo took the front register. Eloise and I entered the storage room together with a clipboard, keyring, and evidence bags. I found the fireproof box. Behind us, the door shut. The latch clicked. Then metal scraped from the outside. I crossed the room in 2 steps and grabbed the steel handle. It would not turn. A hard object had been wedged through the exterior pull. The compressor restarted, and ozone sharpened the smell of cold flour. The anchor had become a warning. Eloise placed the lease papers on a shelf. "Camera?" she asked. I checked the storage room ceiling. No interior camera. Theo's hall camera covers the door. My phone had 1 bar of service. I called Theo. No answer. Then a message appeared from the front register. "Man in delivery jacket ran out alley, calling police." The trap had failed as an attack, Because Theo had been trained to preserve what happened next. I photographed the interior handle, recorded the time, and started an audio log. Eloise looked at me across the narrow aisle, the thumbnail pressed against her finger. "We wait for police," I said. "You are leaving the case." It was not a question. My canvas bag sat at my feet. I had packed more than evidence. Malik's office key rested inside. I had planned to transfer the investigation after the archive hearing. Eloise had seen the transfer draft in Vivian's folder. I can finish the evidence packet and step out before Apex escalates again. I said, "Because of Marcus. Because my history gives him a path to you. The path is Apex. I am part of how they are applying pressure." The refrigeration fan pushed cold air across the flour sacks. "You can leave when that door opens," she said. I looked at her. She stepped farther back between the shelves, leaving the aisle and door clear. No body blocking me, no physical pressure. "But don't make me beg you to believe I have the right to choose this fight." Her voice dropped on the last sentence. The exact words landed inside the room where our case had begun. "Don't make me beg." I tightened my grip on the handle, then let it go. A smear of flour marked my palm. "You know what Marcus is capable of. I know what you are capable of now. That is not the same thing. No, it is the only version that matters to this case." The outside wedge scraped. Sirens approached. Eloise opened the fireproof box and removed the original lease ledger. "I'm not asking you to protect me by disappearing," she said. "I am asking you to complete the lawful work I hired you to do. A document, a decision, a next step." I took out the transfer draft. The refrigeration unit hummed behind us. Then I tore the unsigned page once and placed both halves in my bag. I stayed through settlement or written termination. I said, "No shadow methods, no private retaliation." Malik reviews the evidence package. Agreed. The door opened 5 minutes later. Officer Dana Bell photographed the exterior wedge, which turned out to be a bent delivery latch wrapped in cloth. Theo's hallway camera showed a man in a catering cap entering the bakery after presenting a forged delivery slip. The man's face was visible. Malik recognized him as a contractor Marcus had used years earlier. Theo provided the timestamp and signed a witness statement. The second storage room trap closed one loop and opened the one Apex could no longer control. Before the hearing, Vivian required one final evidence review at Malik's office. Every exhibit received a source label, certification page, and witness path. The entity map had 32 boxes, but only 9 mattered to the injunction. Malik removed the rest. "You are not being paid by the rectangle," he said. The omitted entities show pattern. They also give Apex 12 extra places to create confusion. Eloise sat across from us with the original lease ledger open beside her. She had marked Clause 4B with a yellow tab, and the repair obligations with blue. "What does the judge need first?" she asked. Vivian answered from the speakerphone. "Fraudulent notice, immediate harm, and the concealed project. Everything else supports those 3 points." I reduced the display to a single chain. Apex Parent Company, Property Subsidiary, Rail Affiliate, Northline Testing Vendor, Nexus Project Code. The structure became easier to defend once I stopped trying to prove that I had found everything. Malik signed the review sheet. "This is what clean work looks like," he said. "Not because the facts are gentle, because someone else can follow them without trusting you personally." Eloise looked at the matrix, then at me. "You spent years believing people had to trust you or fear you." I closed the laptop before the sentence could reach too far. "The hearing starts at 9. She did not press. Instead, she slid a paper bag across the table. Inside was a still warm sesame roll and a black coffee. "Evidence review breakfast," she said. Malik opened his own empty bag. "I received no breakfast. You criticized the rectangles. That was professional oversight." The humor lasted less than a minute, but it loosened the room enough for us to finish the packet without turning fear into urgency. Week 7 brought the preliminary injunction and zoning hearing. The courtroom was small enough that everyone heard the paper slide when Vivian placed the evidence packet before Judge Miriam Cole. Nolan Vance sat with Apex counsel. Marcus was absent under a temporary protective order requested after the storage room sabotage. Officer Bell had referred the forged delivery and threat evidence to the district attorney. Vivian called me first. My secured laptop connected to the courtroom display. Tool. Deliverable. Arena. I presented the entity and permit matrix, source timestamps, certified registry records, rail easement purchases, and project code links. Apex counsel objected to inference. I agreed with him on the limit. The records do not prove the final project by themselves. I said, they show coordinated property acquisition, concealed rail access, and environmental testing inconsistent with the announced residential plan. Dr. Rena Shaw testified next. She explained the soil boring pattern, analyte list, and Nexus East Spur project code. Harold Fenwick appeared by video and confirmed his signature had been copied without permission. Theo authenticated the bakery footage, showing the forged delivery trap. Malik testified that he had reviewed my collection process and found no unauthorized system access, illegal interception, or altered source record. Then Vivian produced the concept review document released under the court's order that morning. Nexus East Spur was a proposed hazardous material rail transfer extension. Apex intended to clear the corner properties before filing the environmental route application. Eloise's bakery occupied the only parcel blocking the turning radius required for the spur. The central question closed at the hearing, not before it. Judge Cole granted a preliminary injunction barring demolition, eviction enforcement, and further tenant interference pending final resolution. She found substantial evidence that the structural notice was fraudulent and referred the environmental filings to the zoning authority. Zoning Commissioner Helen Park spoke from the witness table. Mr. Ross's entity map allowed the city to connect records filed under 6 different companies, she said. Without that work, the project code would have appeared unrelated. Third-party recognition. Competence in the light. The judge did not give Eloise a permanent lease. She gave her lawful protection while the case continued. Relief without magic. Week 8 ended the professional case. Apex's lenders froze the Nexus project after the environmental referral. Nolan Vance was removed from the regional development role, pending an internal investigation. Apex terminated Marcus's contract and agreed not to oppose the protective order. The settlement took 4 days of review. Vivian negotiated every clause. The fraudulent eviction was withdrawn with prejudice. Apex funded remediation and independent building inspections. Eloise received a 10-year commercial lease at the current base rent with a 5-year renewal option and limits on future pass-through charges. The property entity paid her legal fees and my investigation invoice. Eloise reviewed the lease with Vivian before signing. I did not stand over her shoulder. When the final invoice cleared, Malik joined me at the bakery's corner table. "You finished without breaking into a server," he said. "I am touched by your confidence. You let counsel do legal work. I can learn. And you did not leave when Marcus used your past." I checked the alley door deadbolt instead of answering. Malik watched me test it twice. Still fixing hardware when words become inconvenient. The bolt drags. It does not. I tested it a 3rd time. He drank his coffee. The professional engagement closed that afternoon. Vivian signed the completion memo. Eloise retained a separate security company for ongoing patrols. My access to bakery systems ended with the case. Only then did she walk into the front room, carrying the antique brass key. Employees and regular customers filled the bakery for a settlement reception. Theo had made a cake shaped like a legal folder, which no one could identify until he explained it. Eloise stood beside the pastry case. "This is Jett Ross," she said to the room. "He investigated the Apex case, preserved the records, and helped us stay open long enough for the law to catch up." Applause moved through the bakery. She waited until it faded. "His invoice has been paid. His contract is closed. He has no professional obligation to remain here." Then she faced me. I'm giving him this key because I want him here personally. The brass key lay across her palm. I took it. The metal was cool and worn near the teeth. Alley door? I asked. And the front? That is irresponsible key control. You can decline. Agency remained, even in the choice. I added the key to my ring. I accept the risk. Theo called from behind the counter. Does this mean he can fix the mixer? No, Eloise and I said together. The bakery laughed. 10 months later, morning light filled the front windows. The new lease hung framed in the office. Apex's remediation fund had paid for electrical upgrades, foundation monitoring, and a replacement refrigeration controller. The bakery's delivery contracts had expanded, and Eloise had opened a second wholesale account without borrowing against her ovens. Marcus remained under a protective order while the district attorney reviewed the sabotage case. Nolan Vance had left Apex after the internal inquiry. The Railspur proposal was withdrawn. My license remained active. My client list was smaller and cleaner. I sat at the usual corner table with a black coffee beside the laptop. Eloise crossed the room in her blush apron and set a plate near my elbow before I could move the power cable out of the way. Almond croissant, she said. I did not order food. You also did not eat breakfast. That sounds outside the scope of our relationship. Our relationship does not have a scope document. That is risky. She smiled and rested one hand on the back of my chair. Near the kitchen, the espresso machine ran without rattling. The storage room door stood open. Beyond it, flour sacks lined the shelves, and the repaired refrigeration unit released a clean electrical warmth instead of ozone. The old cold flour smell remained, but it no longer meant confinement. Theo walked through carrying bread trays. Door check, he said. I looked toward the latch. Eloise caught my sleeve. It was inspected yesterday. I heard a click. You hear responsibilities no one assigned you. The brass key rested against my pocket. I stayed in the chair. For once, the open door did not need me to prove it would remain open. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Trust grows when truth, boundaries, and consistent action survive pressure without taking away another person's choice. Green flag. Healthy love respects agency, separates professional help from emotional obligation, and chooses lawful partnership over control or sacrifice. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.